For as long as there has been power, there has been whispers, whispers of cover ups, of secrets buried deep, of people who knew too much and died far too soon. In the world of American politics, few names carry as much weight or as much baggage as the Clintons, and for decades their political rise has been trailed by a darker narrative, a body count. Dozens of people, staffers, advisors, bodyguards, journalists, business partners, have died under circumstances that some claim are just too suspicious to be coincidence. Accidents, suicides, unsolved murders, and behind it all, a theory that there's no such thing as an inconvenient death, only silenced witnesses. It's one of the most persistent conspiracy theories in modern American history and politics. But is it real? Or is it a mirror reflecting our fear of the powerful and our need to make sense of the senseless? This is the Midnight Mystery Archive, and I'm Kevin. And tonight we examine the facts, fictions, and fallout of the Clinton body count. Our story begins on July 20th, 1993. The Clinton presidency is only 6 months old. Washington, D.C. is a battleground of ambition and scandal. And that afternoon, a body is discovered in Fort Marcy Park just outside the Capitol. The man is Vincent Foster, a trusted advisor and deputy White House counsel. He's lying on a grassy incline, a 38 revolver in his hand, a gunshot wound to his mouth, no sign of a struggle. Foster had been under enormous pressure. He was involved in early investigations of the Whitewater real estate scandal, and he'd become the target of media attacks that accused him of ethics violations. Friends later revealed that Foster was depressed. He was reportedly anxious about his reputation and worried he'd failed the administration. Authorities ruled it a suicide, and four separate investigations, including one by Special Prosecutor Kenneth Starr, confirmed that ruling. But even before the autopsy was complete, the questions began. Critics pointed to the note found in Foster's briefcase, torn into 27 pieces and missing a signature. They asked why there were no fingerprints on the gun and why early responders found little visible blood. There were whispers that the scene had been staged, that Foster had been silenced. Some even suggested he was murdered inside the White House and moved to the park afterward. What should have been a personal tragedy became a political weapon. Talk radio exploded. Conspiracy newsletters started circulating crude diagrams of the crime scene, and the term Clinton body count was born. In 1994, an Arkansas lawyer named Linda Thompson compiled the first version of what she called the Clinton body count, a list of 24 people with connections to the Clintons who had died under, quote, suspicious circumstances. The list soon grew, some say to over 50 names. It included suicides, plane crashes, unsolved murders, and even a few accidental deaths that seemed to Thompson and her followers just a little too convenient. To many, this list was a chilling breadcrumb trail left by a ruthless political machine. To others, it was paranoia dressed up as patriotism. And for Vince Foster's family, it was agony. His death was not just a private loss, it became a permanent fixture in the machinery of conspiracy culture. But Vincent Foster was just the beginning. The next names on the list would come from coffee shops, cargo planes, and campaign halls. each death more curious than the last. By the late 1990s, the list had taken on a life of its own. It was no longer about Vince Foster. It was about patterns, unexplained deaths, missing witnesses, political enemies who didn't live long enough to testify. And some of those stories, the ones that truly embedded this theory into the public imagination, are the ones we're about to explore now. Mary Mahoney was a 25-year-old former White House intern. In July of 1997, she was working as an assistant manager at a Starbucks in Georgetown. One morning, she was found dead, shot multiple times in what was initially described as a robbery gone wrong. But there was no money taken, no fingerprints left behind, no signs of forced entry, and Mahoney had known enemies. To conspiracy theorists, this was a red flag. Some believed she had knowledge of sexual misconduct within the White House. Others thought she was preparing to go public and was killed to ensure her silence. Police eventually arrested a man called Carl D. Cooper, who confessed to the murder and was convicted. But those suspicious of the Clinton connection weren't convinced. For them, Mary Mahoney wasn't just a victim, she was evidence. Ron Brown was a U.S. Secretary of Commerce and one of the most prominent black leaders in the Clinton administration. In 1996, while on a trade mission to Croatia, Brown's Air Force plane crashed during bad weather. Everyone on board was killed. But when the bodies were recovered, an Air Force pathologist claimed Brown had what looked like a bullet hole in his skull, and no metal fragments from the crash were found nearby. No autopsy was performed. The official ruling? Accident. The conspiracy version? Ron Brown was under investigation and had threatened to testify. Some claim the crash was staged, or at the very least, convenient. Again, no proof, but when you're building a theory, doubt is more powerful than evidence. Fast forward to 2016. The political landscape is utterly toxic. The internet has been weaponized, and 27-year-old Seth Rich, a DNC staffer, is gunned down just blocks from his home in DC. Police say it was a botched robbery, but again, nothing was taken. His wallet, his watch, his phone, all left behind. The internet lit up. Julian Assange hinted that Rich might have been the source of DNC leaks to WikiLeaks. Others claimed he was silenced to protect Hillary Clinton's campaign. The theory was explosive, and it spiraled quickly. Rich's family begged for it to stop. The FBI denied any connection, and yet the story wouldn't die. For many, Seth Rich became the modern Vince Foster, a young, idealistic insider taken out just as he learned too much. The names would pile up. James McDougal, Clinton business associate, died in prison from a heart attack. John Ash, former UN official who died with a barbell on his neck the day before testifying in a Clinton-linked case. Even Ed Willie, whose wife claimed Bill Clinton assaulted her, died of an apparent suicide in his car in the woods. To believers, these aren't isolated incidents. They're warnings written in blood. Here's the thing about long lists. When you look at enough people, some of them will die unexpectedly. It's inevitable, especially in the pressure cooker of world politics. Statisticians have long argued that the Clinton body count is no more suspicious than the death rate of any large network of political allies and enemies. But logic doesn't always win, because in the court of public opinion, The more names you say out loud, the more believable the silence becomes. Before Reddit, before podcasts, before hashtags and live streams, there were email chains, message boards, photocopied lists handed out at political rallies. And on those lists were names, deaths, allegations, each one a seed planted in the minds of those already suspicious of the political machine of DC and specifically the Clintons. The Clinton body count didn't spread in silence, it was amplified by voices who knew how to stir fear, outrage, and attention. Rush Limbaugh, G. Gordon Liddy, and other right wing radio hosts ran with the theory in the 90s, using it to cast the Clintons as mob style power brokers. The list grew longer with every scandal: Whitewater, Travelgate, Monica Lewinsky. But it wasn't just talk radio. In the early 2000s, the rise of blogs and forums like Free Republic, InfoWars, and 4chan gave the theory a new home. The body count list became clickbait before clickbait existed. Shared, reposted, reinterpreted, morphing like a digital ghost story. There's a reason this theory stuck. It seemed plausible. It felt plausible. How could so many people die such unnatural deaths, all connected to the same people? It wasn't hard to see how people could build a conspiracy around this list of deaths. Psychologists call it pattern recognition bias, our natural tendency to connect unrelated events, especially in times of confusion or fear. It's a survival instinct gone haywire. There's also confirmation bias. We're more likely to believe evidence that supports what we already suspect to be true. So if you distrust politicians, a completely reasonable position to take, and a list claims they've left bodies in their wake, that story doesn't need to be proven. It just needs to have a semblance of truth and it needs to feel true. Add to that the power of repetition, and soon the Clinton body count wasn't just a fringe theory. It was a cultural meme, a punchline, a weapon. By 2016, the theory had made a full comeback. Of course, Hillary Clinton was running for president, and Donald Trump's campaign was flirting with it. Memes began to flood Twitter and Facebook. Even people with no political background or any known political beliefs had heard at some point the phrase, "don't cross the Clintons or you'll end up on the list." No one ever proved the list was real. They didn't necessarily need to because the deaths actually happened. But in the era of fake news and filter bubbles, proof that they were all connected to a conspiracy didn't matter. The theory had become undeniable folklore, and in some circles, folklore carries more weight than truth. The Clinton body count theory has never been proven, not in court, not by investigators, and not in any official capacity. Yet it endures. It endures because it doesn't have to prove anything. It just has to suggest. And in the vacuum between fact and suspicion, suggestion is usually just enough. The theory doesn't exist in isolation. It exists in a country where distrust in government runs deep, where the powerful often seem untouchable, and where stories of secret cabals, blackmail, and hit lists feel more like possible truths than fiction. We live in a time where the boundary between conspiracy and politics is blurry, and it's largely born out of distrust for politicians and politics in general, where an internet search can deliver you answers, but also pull you into an alternate reality. The Clinton body count is, at its core, a modern American myth, a story built from tragedy, coincidence, fear, and the human need to connect the dots. So, what's real? The truth is that people do die unexpectedly, and many of them were close to the Clintons. Some weren't. In most cases, there is no evidence of foul play. But theories like this don't run on evidence, they run on unease. And in that unease, we find something more powerful than proof: narrative. So, does the Clinton body count represent a true web of political murders? Or is it the ghost story of an era that no longer trusts its own institutions? Maybe the more important question isn't about what the Clintons did. Maybe it's about what we're willing to believe they could have done. This is the Midnight Mystery Archive, and I'm Kevin. And we will see you next time with another political mystery and where the truth hides in the shadows. You've just heard another journey into the shadows from the Midnight Mystery Archive, where the past whispers and the unknown waits in silence. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. You can also listen and watch on YouTube, where each case comes with visuals that bring the mystery to life. New episodes drop Tuesday and Friday, bringing you deeper into the world's darkest, unsolved mysteries, forgotten crimes, and chilling disappearances. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your lights low. Some stories aren't over, they're just waiting to be found.